Um, my name is Scott Emerson Moyle. I do a bunch of things. I'm currently a member of Generator's Artist Producer Training Program, and the thing that I'm doing lately that feels the most important is apprenticing to work as an intimacy director, an intimacy choreographer. The terms are sort of used interchangeably, and that's with an organization called Intimacy Directors International, or IDI for short. So IDI was founded by a movement professional named Tonya Sina, who works out of Oklahoma primarily. She was a fight director who was getting called in to work on fight stuff, but also sexual violence or intimate violence or domestic partner violence. And then that turned into maybe that skill set can also be used to help stage sexual intimacy that's nonviolent. And past a point, she was doing so much of that work that became her master's thesis, and that's now what she does through IDI. So it sort of comes out of fight direction, and that's a really useful paradigm because if we're doing Romeo and Juliet, and I'm playing Tybalt and you're playing Mercutio, everybody expects reasonably that it should look a lot like we want to kill each other, but everybody also expects that I will not want to kill you at the bar after the show. I will not come after you with a sword under any circumstance outside of what the fight director has explicitly told me to do. And yet, historically, the expectations in a parallel circumstance, if, say, we're playing Juliet and Romeo, might be different. And so with intimacy direction exists to treat it as a rehearsable, safety-focused thing that can be repeated over and over again in a way that is driven by consent, and in a way that focuses on the needs of the story above, and the safety needs of the performers telling that story above everything else. So it can cover everything from sexual intimacy to performing with some or full nudity, to finding chemistry between actors who are having difficulty finding that chemistry, to non-sexual family intimacy. But consent is the most important thing, and the thing I really love about this work is that it explicitly brings consent culture into the rehearsal room. So we're going to do an exercise. Now, I'm going to give you permission in this exercise, but that's not the same thing as consent. Permission can be given by sort of anybody who's running or overseeing a given moment or exercise. Consent can only be given by the people involved. And so I'm giving you all permission to do this thing, but you do not have to consent to it, and that's true of all of this work. So, Christina, can I borrow you? So we discussed this ahead of time. I'm not springing this on her, and that's pretty characteristic of this work too. Yeah, let's just go in front of the thing. Cool. So the exercise has two steps, and step one is I am going to ask for consent. I'm going to ask Christina if I may place my hand on her shoulder, and if she wants to consent, again, I'm giving her permission to consent, but not forcing or demanding that she consent, because that's not how that works. If she says yes, then I will put my hand on her shoulder, and that's the moment. So let's try that, just to model it. Christina, may I place my hand on your shoulder?
Yes.
That's it. And that doesn't seem like a lot, but normalizing asking for consent and giving it is important, and it starts here. So what I'd like you all to do is find somebody nearby. And there's no requirement or pressure to participate in this. I'm giving you permission, and that's all. But if you'd like to, find somebody nearby and ask them if you can place your hand on their shoulder. And if you're asked and you feel so inclined, say yes. And then try it the other way, so everybody gets a chance to ask for and give consent. Try that now. Sorry? Okay, so we've only got 8 minutes, so I want to move pretty quickly. But there's a second part to this. The second step of this exercise is I'm going to ask Christina for exactly the same thing, consent to place my hand on her shoulder, and she's going to say no, and then I am going to not do that thing. Christina, may I place my hand on your shoulder?
No, thank you.
And that's it. Now try that. Seriously, go for it. So I'll be around in the breakout sessions to sort of talk about this kind of stuff in detail. But thank you, Christina. Thank you very much. So asking for consent is not something we are necessarily familiar or comfortable with or used to. It's not necessarily normalized. Saying yes isn't necessarily normalized. And sometimes saying no, even if it's just, may I place my hand on your shoulder, sometimes saying no feels really fucking weird, or really unusual or really uncomfortable. And so we start with that exercise, literally exactly that, in an expanded format, to just normalize consent, and then we build from there. So there's more to intimacy direction than that. We deal a lot with mental health first aid. Everybody who's certified as an IDI intimacy director has to have taken mental health first aid. And we're not therapists, but we can be the first line of injury, just as if I'm fight directing and you roll your ankle, I'm not the doctor who will take care of that long term, but I am going to do some stuff in the moment to make sure lasting damage is minimized or managed. Having that mental health first aid training helps a lot around moments where you find a surprise trigger that you weren't necessarily prepared to encounter that day. We can be the person to report to, although that comes with the caution of if I'm working as your intimacy director, we will also have established a structure for who you can talk to about me if there's any problem with what I'm doing. Safety can't be centralized on one person. We learned a lot about that this week. So I have some support materials that I'll be able to hand out during the breakout session with links to Intimacy Directors International, with links to a workshop that's happening next week in intimacy direction for directors and stage managers specifically, and I'll be around to talk about this. But I want to leave you with one last thing. What Tonya developed, sweet, thank you. What Tonya developed when she was putting together this field of work, this body of work, was something called the pillars. They're 4 words that are really easy to remember. Context, so that has to do with we're going to talk about the context of what this moment of intimacy needs to be in the context of the play, but it's also the idea that an action that is acceptable and safe in one context might be very different in a different context. It's about communication, and I think that was made pretty explicit through the exercise we did. We communicate about everything, and we've got all the time we need to talk about safety and to talk about getting through these moments. It's consent. Nothing happens without consent. Full stop. The end. And it's choreography, and that can involve choreographing a kiss in as much detail as the actors require to feel safe doing it, all the way up to all kinds of very elaborate choreographies, sometimes very specific, sometimes more grounded in the idea of container building, of we're going to build a shape and work within it. But again, that's all dependent on what the artists involved feel safe with. So I'll leave you with this. If there is intimate contact in work you are doing, ask for an intimacy director. Look up the resources online. There are really simple principles laid out that you can use to get started with. It's a new field of study that we're trying to get out there with, and I think it's going to make a very big difference moving forward. Thank you very much.